Hey, how's everybody doing? I hope you're feeling good. This is week 3 of the NFL season, No Huddle Fantasy Sports. We're bringing at you the NFL week 3 DFS Slate Playbook here on the channel, where we're going to talk main slate Sunday NFL football. Whether you're playing FanDuel or DraftKings, I've got you covered with quarterbacks, running backs, wide receivers, even tight ends, the players you want to build your lineups around this weekend for DFS. Sit back, relax. This is No Huddle Fantasy Sports. Yo, hey guys, what's up? How is everyone doing? Welcome back to the channel. I hope you are all as excited as I am for week 3 NFL DFS. It's shaping up to be a really interesting slate. I have a lot of different players, a lot of quarterbacks, a lot of running backs, wide receivers, all the positions you want to hear about. I got a lot of guys I want to talk to you about, give you some details on that. As I mentioned in the introduction, welcome back to the channel. Welcome back to No Huddle Fantasy Sports. This is the NFL Week 3 DFS Slate Playbook, where we go into more detail for this upcoming Sunday main slate DFS. I don't care if you're playing FanDuel or DraftKings. Trust me, this video is going to be useful. It's going to be helpful. It's going to help you build better lineups and make better decisions in DFS this weekend. We're going to talk all positions. We're going to talk salary. I'm going to give you some reasoning behind my ideas, why I'm playing certain players. The only thing I will say early on as a disclaimer, keep in mind I'm primarily a tournament style player. 90% of the time or more, I would say, probably even higher than that, I play only tournaments. I know that's not the best option always. You should diversify, you should get cash games, and I hope you guys are doing that. But I have a lot of fun with tournaments. I play primarily tournaments. We're good at it. We do well in it. So I'm just going to keep doing that here. Just keep in mind as we go through these selections, that is the strategy when I'm putting together these particular videos. I'm thinking about ownership. I'm thinking about recency bias. I'm thinking about which players are going to see the most DFS ownership. And I'm trying to leverage off that. I'm trying to pivot off of that. All the things that you should do in tournaments, that's where these selections come from. At times I'll mention cash. At times I'll talk about certain players are better in 50-50s, better in head-to-heads, or should be. If I don't mention that, just keep in mind I'm pretty much playing only tournaments, and that's the strategy here. But outside of that, as always, thank you guys so much for finding your way here, navigating your way to No Huddle Fantasy Sports. I hope you're here because you saw some previous videos and you found a lot of success, especially in week 2. We absolutely crushed it. We are cooking right now in NFL DFS. It's been an excellent couple of weeks. We're going to continue to roll into week 3 here. The only thing I ask of you guys, please, before we get any further, make sure you're subscribed to the channel. I put out DFS content every single day, whether it's for MLB or NFL. Those are my bread and butters. I don't do anything else. So if you're into those, into MLB, into NFL, please make sure you're subscribed. Give these videos a like. I put a ton of effort and time to these videos. You have no idea. I enjoy this stuff though, and I enjoy you guys being here. So make sure you're subscribed. Make sure you give these videos a like, share them, all the good stuff that helps me. It's free to you guys. Just click a bunch of buttons, type some words down below. Trust me, it helps me out. It's a simple, I help you, you help me. I think that's easy enough, right guys? But we've wasted enough time. Let's get started here. What are we looking at for week 3? What is the slate outlook? Again, 13 games. I don't think I have to say that again. Every week is going to be 13 games up until playoffs. But we're sticking to, again, early in the season, greater predictive positions. That's been the strategy. It's worked so far, meaning we don't have a ton of data. We have 2 weeks of certain teams are looking like great defenses. By the end of the season, they'll be really bad defenses. So we need to stick to what we know. The predictive positions are quarterback and running back. That's been the strategy. Let's continue to stick with that strategy for now. Focus on the higher paced games. I did that a little bit last week. You start to sort some of the data. You can see how many plays are being run per second. All those things. It's important. More plays equals more fantasy value. It's basically the bottom line there. So make sure if you guys are looking at your own stuff, looking into research, check out the higher paced games. I'll make mention of some of them here, but that's an important stat. It just gives you more of an opportunity. That's what you need in DFS. Extreme over and unders. You're going to see a ton of points to be scored on this slate. There's a game of 57. I honestly cannot remember a single over under that high in the NFL. I don't know, the last 5 or 10 years. So you're going to see a ton of high ownership as a result. Go to those particular games. We will discuss them. We'll talk about if we can eat that chalk or we're going to pivot away from that. All that will be discussed. Other things I want to mention. It seems like on both sites, everybody is affordable. Now, what you have, of course, are certain high-priced players not available. Mahomes and Jackson, of course, are not available. Lamar Jackson, Patrick Mahomes on either site for the main slate. They're playing on they're playing on the primetime slates. So you don't have those expensive quarterbacks available. In terms of running backs, of course, we lost Saquon Barkley. We lost Christian McCaffrey. So those extremely like $10,000 up value running backs, salary running backs are not on the slate. As a result, it seems like everybody is affordable. You could almost make anything on this particular slate happen. I think that's good. I think it's good and bad. It's good in the sense it's going to open up a more of an opportunity for everyone to succeed on this slate. At the same time, everyone has a better opportunity to succeed on this slate. You're going to see extreme ownership at certain positions. More specifically, concentrated QB ownership. Again, we're going to see a 57 over/under total on a game. Tons of QB ownership is going to come there. We'll talk about all that. The last couple things I want to mention here quickly. Check out recency bias, check out ownerships, take those into consideration. Don't chase game logs. Don't be the person that is going to be a part of recency bias. Know what it is, take advantage of it, leverage it, all that good stuff. We'll talk about all of it. And you can see here, I typically tell you where I'm going to spend money. Up, down, left, right, whatever. QB, running back, wide receiver, tight end. This slate, it's not really mattering. You can almost afford everyone, especially the guys I'm talking about. So they're all pretty much in play here. We're just going to build the best possible lineups. Let's move on very quickly to Vegas totals here. We talk about this every week. They're extremely important. I didn't do it very well in week 1 in terms of tracking this. Week 2, we did it and we crushed. So again, Vegas totals, you guys need to pay attention to this. I'm giving you what I have right now. I've recorded this video either late Friday night or early Saturday morning. So in general, these are going to change. You have a day or two left. Totals are going to go up and down, but in general, you have an idea here. You can see there's some particular games, especially Tennessee at Minnesota at 50. You have Dallas at Seattle at 57. Those two games, and including the Detroit at Arizona game, all above 50 in terms of an over-under. Excellent games in terms of attacking from a DFS perspective. You want to get ownership of offensive players from those games. Now, the one I talked about, Dallas at Seattle, is 57. That's an extremely high total. It's been going up and going up. Seattle was projected 30.3 points on the day, or on Sunday, I should say. Arizona's 30. Indianapolis is 27. All of these are extremely high totals to take into consideration. On the flip side, anything highlighted red, especially your Washingtons, your Giants, your Denver, Carolina, and New York Jets, especially the Jets, all under 20 projected implied team total points. You want to avoid that. There's not a lot of fantasy goodness there. Now, I will select a couple guys from those. I think there are certain players you can get exposure to, but in general, keep that in mind, especially from your quarterbacks and wide receivers. Those are not games that you want to get a lot of exposure to. Unless you guys know something I don't, leave me a comment down below. So the moment you guys have been waiting for in this video, let's jump to the quarterbacks. There are a billion of quarterbacks available on this slate in good spots. I struggled, this is why this video is coming out a little bit later than normal, to really give you my top 2. I will say Cam Newton is by far clearly my #1 quarterback on the slate. It's the #2 guy here. Now, in terms of my #2 here, I will fully admit to you guys, and this is where you need to make your decision. It's either Prescott, Murray, or Wilson. All three of those guys are in play. All three of those guys are in excellent spots. But again, keep in mind, I'm a tournament player. After really looking into this, I think Dak Prescott represents what I want at the quarterback position in tournaments this weekend. He's going to be, of those three I just mentioned, lower owned. In addition to that, he's the only away quarterback. I do like to take quarterbacks on the road, but we will get to that. Let's start first with Cam Newton. I talked about him as my #1, easily my #1 on the board based on projections, the matchup, and overall ownership. He's $7,700 on FanDuel, so he's not super expensive, but he is up there. I would say that top mid-tier price, $6,700 on DraftKings. Like that price there. He's playing at home versus Las Vegas. Again, don't typically like to take quarterbacks at home, but for Cam Newton, it's a different story here. 47 over-under. It's a healthy over-under. It's certainly not above 50 like those 3 games we had just talked about in the Vegas totals, but it's definitely a spot that is not one you would avoid. 47 is a healthy number. New England is a decent favorite. Again, that doesn't always translate well when selecting quarterbacks. At home, -5.5, 26.8 implied team total. I like the team total, but the 5.5 favorite doesn't bother me, again, with Cam Newton, for various reasons, including the fact that even if they get up, he is their rushing goal line back. We all know this, right? But in general, let's talk about Cam here. He's a top 5 Pro Football Focus season graded quarterback. He's, I think, number 3 maybe. But in general, so far through 2 weeks, he has been absolutely on fire. Excellent so far. Pro Football Focus agrees. In terms of the offense and defensive line pass advantage, I think this is a very important stat here. He has a plus 31%. That's one of the best pass advantages on the slate, meaning the Las Vegas Raiders should not be able to get to him. He should have plenty of time in the pocket when he does pass. That equals goodness. In general, it's a great opportunity against this Las Vegas secondary and defensive front in general for Cam Newton. Pass volume is great. He had 44 pass attempts in week 2. That's very, very good. I mean, if he had 30 with the rushing attempts he gets, I'd still take that. The fact you see him throw 44 times. Now, it was against Seattle. Seattle, again, a team that you want to attack through the air, and I believe it was on the road. So we could see that number come down a little bit, but you still like to see that they are throwing the ball a ton with Cam Newton. 44 attempts week 2 is an excellent number. I just wanted to highlight that there quickly. 26 total rushing attempts and 4 rushing touchdowns so far this season. That's the key with Cam Newton here. Those are insane numbers. That's Lamar Jackson style numbers, if not better, because of the touchdowns. 4 total touchdowns. He's getting a ridiculous amount of red zone carries from the 5-yard line, whatever it is. Once they get in the red zone, Cam Newton is looking to run the ball in. It's not Sonny Michel. It's not Rex Burkhead. It is Cam Newton. So that alone gives him a ridiculous floor, but the 44 passing attempts makes his upside basically elite any given week. Really, really like to see that there in general. Solid team total, I talked about that, and it's a good over-under. It's not something you want to avoid. And I mentioned the Las Vegas defense. Their secondary is graded 31st in the NFL by Pro Football Focus through 2 weeks. If you guys didn't know, there's only 32 teams in the NFL, meaning they are really bad. They've drafted some young guys. They're really inexperienced. They're not getting any pressure on quarterbacks. It's just a bad situation for that defense, and Cam Newton in a prime time spot, in my opinion, versus them. Two last things I want to mention here. Predictable wide receiver usage. You're seeing 60% of his passes go to Edelman and Harry. That is great from a stacking perspective. You can play Cam Newton and you know exactly where, pretty much. I mean, it's still an educated guess, but where the ball is going to go, meaning you can definitely capitalize on the points when they go off. I really, really like that. I love the predictability about that. It's going to go a long way in DFS, especially in week 3. Last but not least, he is projected to be, I think, the 4th or 5th owned quarterback. That is the sweet spot for me. That's what we did last week with Josh Allen. That's where we want to go with Cam Newton this week. You're going to get leverage on the field on all the players if he goes off or stays close to those more expensive quarterbacks. I do love that spot for Cam Newton. I love week 3 Cam Newton, number 1 on the board. We've wasted a lot of time on Cam Newton, but that's important there. I talked a little bit about Dak Prescott. The reason I'm listing him here again is from a tournament perspective, he will be lower owned compared to Russell Wilson and Kyler Murray. In addition to that, he is on the road in Seattle, whereas those guys are playing at home. You like to take quarterbacks on the road. He is an underdog. Those guys are favorites. Those 3 things, to me, make sense. I want to go with a quarterback that checks those boxes there. Cam Newton's a different story. Dak Prescott fits that for me here. Now, he is expensive. He's $8,500 on FanDuel, $72 on DraftKings. Again, projected to be lower owned than some of those other higher projected quarterbacks. Playing on the road here in Seattle, the key, the 57 over-under. That's going to be excellent. Now, keep in mind, he will have ownership. I'm not saying he won't. But again, we're trying to get a little bit of leverage here. I think he's the best play from a tournament perspective versus those other guys. Dallas is an underdog, +5 on the road, 25.3 total implied team total. You have to like that there. Excellent. Road underdog, likely lesser owned. Talked about that already. Top 10 so far on the season in terms of QB grade. We talked about Cam Newton be top 5. This guy's right behind him within the top 10. Huge offensive line, pass advantage again, something we like for quarterbacks, +18%. Second fastest pace of play game. That's excellent. That means there's going to be more opportunity, more volume, all the good things you like here. And more importantly, they do have Ezekiel Elliott. They are a good running team, or have been in the past. Their offensive line is banged up. That is the only scary thing about Dak Prescott. In terms of Zeke, though, I like Dak from the sense that Dallas has only been passing the ball. It's a 60-40 run or pass-run split so far in 2020, meaning it's tons of volume through the air, tons of opportunity for Dak Prescott. He had an excellent week 2, by the way. Now, 3 touchdowns were 1-yard QB sneaks. That's 18 total points came from that. I'm not saying he wouldn't have thrown one in there, but you got to take into consideration that his performance last week was largely driven on those 1-yard carries, 1-yard sneaks. So that's not going to happen ever again. You know it's not going to happen in that sense, 3 QB sneaks. But he does run the ball from time to time. Last couple things here, he has elite weapons. We know the Coopers, the CeeDee Lambs, the Gallups, the Elliots, all those guys set him up very well week in and week out. Fantasy goodness there, DFS goodness. And Seattle's secondary is not very good. 22nd overall in the NFL. They got absolutely crushed by Matt Ryan in week 1. They've given up, I think, 4 or 5 100-yard receivers already on the season. All good things here, all great for DFS. I like Dak Prescott from that perspective. Moving on to the running back position here, and I know we're about 15 minutes in. I'll try to speed this up for you guys. Thank you for hanging in there, but I'm into this, man. We are passionate about week 3. We're going to crush it. This is what it's all about here. We know why we're making these plays. I'm giving you guys the understanding, the knowledge, so you can make the right decision here. My top 2 guys here, I'm listing Dalvin Cook and Kenyon Drake. Dalvin Cook, another guy I think you're going to see lower ownership compared to other elite backs here, mainly because of recency bias. He's been okay, but hasn't been great. Also hasn't been getting a ridiculous amount of usage like you typically expect from your Cooks. But $8,600 on FanDuel, $7,600 on DraftKings. He's playing at home versus Tennessee. Huge over-under of 50. Again, really like that number there. Minnesota is an underdog at home at +2.5. That is a little concerning from a running back's perspective, but it's a tight total there. It's a tight spread, meaning I don't think it's going to get carried away. It shouldn't, at least from a Vegas perspective. The game will be close. Cook will stay involved. And he has been involved in the passing game. A lot of things you want to consider here, but 23 implied team total, a very healthy number for the team itself. His total touches, I mentioned, they're down a little bit. I think that's why people are going away from him. The coaching staff has noticed this, though. If you look back into notes, look back into the last week of them talking, they mentioned that they are not getting Dalvin Cook the ball enough, even though they're a good running team. So that is good news, and from a lower ownership, you love that. You want to see this guy. I think he's still getting around 20 touches, but he's a guy that gets 25 to 30 at times, gets a ton of usage in the passing game. I think you're going to see a sneaky Dalvin Cook here, just see a bump in usage, and it's going to be an excellent spot here versus Tennessee. Again, elite back, good matchup, lower ownership. Those are the 3 things I'm most interested about Cook here. He saw 80% of the running back snaps in week 2. Again, if you're scared about that, if you're looking at backs that need or that are on the field, this guy's not coming off the field. There's only a couple backs ahead of him in terms of that type of running back snap usage. Minnesota itself, 3rd highest running grade on Pro Football Focus. That's more on Dalvin Cook than anything. In fact, their run blocking is down from that. It's like middle of the pack. So Dalvin Cook has been excellent so far this season. I think he's the 4th overall graded running back in all of football that got significant snaps already. In general, it's a significant offensive line run disadvantage. I did want to point that out. From that perspective, it doesn't look good. But again, we're only a couple weeks in. I use these at times, but at certain times you have to recognize what is good and what is bad. I think right now the Minnesota offensive line isn't as bad as they're leading off. It's just Kirk Cousins has been bad. A lot of different things are going on. I'm not so worried about that. But Tennessee's run defense, that's what we do want to focus in on here. 24th overall in football in terms of a Pro Football Focus grade from a run defense perspective. If you want to highlight that, look into it a little bit. Jacksonville in week 2 had 165 rushing yards and a 6.1 yards per carry. Now that kid that's playing for Jacksonville as a running back, the pickup, wasn't drafted, whatever he was, young rookie, playing really well, right? Still, it's Jacksonville, not the best, versus a Tennessee team that was very good, made a run in the playoffs. So that just highlights there that they're not playing very good against the run this year. I think Dalvin Cook's in a great spot. Moving on to the next running back I have listed here, that's Kenyon Drake for Arizona, playing at home versus Detroit. $6,500 on FanDuel, $6K on DraftKings. The pricing here is key for this guy, but in general, I think he's in a good spot. 55 over/under, have to love that. 2nd highest on the board. Arizona is a favorite at home at -5 versus Detroit. Again, checking another box for a home running back being a decent home favorite. Got that box checked. 30 implied team total, 2nd highest on the slate. We have a lot of points to be scored here, so it's a great spot for Kenyon Drake. I think he's underpriced on both sites. He's the best value running back from the perspective of an expensive, not expensive, but an elite back. His price is too low. He should be above $7,000. He's not yet there. He's been dropping because of performances, and maybe we see some recency bias. Maybe we see some people not play him, but in general, I will say off the bat, a lot of people in the industry are talking about him, talking about his pricing, talking about getting exposure to that game. So I think you're going to see higher ownership. He might be a top 5 owned player, but it's chalk I'm willing to eat here, especially at that price tag. This is the perfect get-right game for him. I talked about how he hasn't been great so far this season, but he's had some bad matchups in general, bad or tough defenses in terms of a run defense. This is a great spot for him. He's, again, a home favorite, big favorite running back. It's a great pivot, solid pivot off of Murray, Hopkins. I think everybody is going to go there. I think they'll still go to Drake, but it's still a good pivot off of them to get a little bit less ownership in terms of a running back, in terms of a player from that game, but still get exposure to that high score. Likely still high ownership. I talked about that a little bit there. He saw 65% of the running back snaps in week 2. That's not an elite number like we see with Dalvin Cook and other running backs in the league, but still a very solid number. And again, you're talking $6,500, $6K on DraftKings. That's the key here. Detroit's run defense has been horrendous against the run this year, or defense against the run this year has been really, really bad. They grade out 26th overall in football from Pro Football Focus. A good example would be, go back to week 2. We talked about playing Aaron Jones against them at home. Look what happened. He went absolutely off. In fact, that's why we did so well in week 2. A big key piece there. So we're going back to that same spot here, that same matchup with Kenyon Drake. Great get-right spot for Kenyon Drake. More importantly, I like to sometimes look at the tackling grades from Pro Football Focus. Certain teams are really bad at tackling. What does that mean? For wide receivers that catch underneath passes, it's a great spot. And for running backs, it's a great spot. Detroit ranked 21st here, meaning they don't tackle anyone, or they're bottom of the league in terms of tackling. All things point up for Kenyon Drake in this smash spot. I really, really like him. I don't care if people own him. He's my favorite value back on the slate. Two other guys I'll quickly mention here. We're going right back to the Austin Eckler well here. A little bit disappointing last week. I'm not going to get into it with playing him, had a chance to take down big tournaments, and he just did not get usage in the fourth quarter. But in general, still a good spot. We're going right back there. Austin Eckler, $7,500 on FanDuel, $68 on DraftKings, playing at home versus Carolina. 43.5 over-under, so not as elite as some of those other games we talked about, but still a good spot. The Chargers, key here, -6.5, home favorites. They have Herbert playing at quarterback and still a decent favorite. 25.0 implied team total. A good team total there for Eckler for that team. You like home favorite running backs, heavy home favorite running backs. That's what you got here. He had 20 total touches in week 2. I don't think people realize that. He did very well in terms of having 20 or more touches. That's what you want out of a back. Ideally, we want 25 or more. We should get that with him. I don't know what they're doing, but in general, 20 touches in week 2, 16 came on the ground, and he had 4 receptions for 148 rushing yards, or total yards, I should say, between rushing. I think 93 were rushing, so also had a great day with limited attempts on the ground. In addition to that, he had 4 red zone rushing attempts. That's on the season so far, and that includes, or that is in addition to a target. So a lot of people talking about how Kelly's stealing everything. He did in the last game. That was a stupid play by the Chargers there to continue to pound like a 2.0 yard per carry running back that's doing nothing at the end of a game, trying to close out a game. Alrighty, so I'm diving into it. I shouldn't do that. I shouldn't go there. But in general, that's what I'm talking about. Eckler is the elite back in that offense. He should continue to get usage. More importantly, Herbert at quarterback helps him. You saw better receiving usage out of Eckler when Herbert played versus Tyrod Taylor. Tyrod Taylor at times is a fantasy black hole, a killer, doesn't help anyone. I think Herbert helps him, gives him a bump. The price is expensive. That's a little bit of a bummer here, but as a result, I think you're going to see like 5% or less ownership on him, and I do love that. It's particularly in this matchup. Carolina's run defense is graded 32 overall, meaning dead last in the NFL, according to Pro Football Focus. So a great spot for a running back against them. The Chargers, on the other hand, their run and their blocking grades for the season are 12th overall. So they're nearly a top 10 team versus the worst team. Great spot for him. I don't think they want to put a ton on Herbert here. It does not sound like they want him to still be the starter. It's just out of necessity here. As a result, I think you're going to see a lot of Kelly, but I still think Eckler is in a good spot, especially he gets some usage out of the backfield. Let's count on 20 touches again, hopefully 25. It's a frustrating split still with Kelly. I think eventually they may just give up on him, but we will see. I know they drafted him. Again, lower ownership. I like Austin Eckler. Last guy here, another guy that's going to be a bit chalky. Not as bad as some of the others, but Jerick McKinnon. Of course, he's getting the start here for San Francisco with a ton of injuries, but he's $5,700 on FanDuel, $49 on DraftKings, so gives you a huge value opportunity there at the running back position. Downside is he's on the road in New York. It's a big, far travel game. 42 over under. That's a low total. San Francisco is a favorite on the road, so that's at least a positive for him. 23 implied team total. Again, pretty low there, but nonetheless, I still like the spot and the price on him. He's a value play on both DraftKings and FanDuel. Injuries to Mostert and Coleman open up opportunity, open up usage. They talked highly about McKinnon, how well he's played. People forget he was really good before Dalvin Cook in Minnesota. He suffered some horrible injuries to his knees, finally came back. He's a good running back, or had been, so it's a good spot for him. I really like McKinnon in his spot. If you're playing anything, season long, DFS, whatever you're playing, I do like McKinnon this week. But again, I think you're going to see some ownership on him because of the price tag there. If you look him up, if you look how he's looked and played on limited snaps this year, and how he's graded from Pro Football Focus, he's been really good, if not excellent, on from both fronts. So that's, again, another positive here. San Francisco's run grade, more importantly, is first overall in football. Where's my mind going here? According to Pro Football Focus, San Francisco run block grade a little bit worse, but still top half of the league, 14th overall. So again, a positive sign there. And the last thing I want to point out here, the New York Giants run defense so far in 2020 has graded out very well. In fact, they're third overall in football. But again, this is 2 weeks into the season. We're going to use those stats where we can, but we're going to look into them always and make sure that they make sense. To me, that does not make sense. If you take into account the first 2 weeks of the season, they played the Steelers. They injured James Conner, right? Or he got injured. And Blaney Snell came in and had an excellent game. A backup running back for the Steelers that barely saw the field in week 2 did very well against that Giants team. In week 2, David Montgomery, the Chicago Bears, had a very good game versus them also. So in general, I don't think the third overall was something I'm scared of. But again, we're talking value here. It's a great spot on the road, huge favorite. I like Jerick McKinnon as my value running back here on the slate. Moving on to the wide receivers here, I think there's a bunch of wide receivers that are options this week. There's a couple of guys in particular, 4 I want to point out to you guys. The first one is Amari Cooper. Now, this directly correlates, obviously, with Dak Prescott, CeeDee Lamb also, Michael Gallup, all those guys. You're going to stack. That's what I do in tournaments. That's what you should be doing to get the best correlations. But Amari Cooper, of that, is my favorite. I think for an elite receiver, he's going to be one of the lower-owned elite receivers. Definitely will garnish ownership. Definitely will be owned. But he's still in a great spot in lower ownership than some of the others. $7K on FanDuel, $6,500 on DraftKings. I think this guy is underpriced. I think they're doing a disservice to him by pricing him at $7,000, $6,500. It's just not appropriate for him. I realize I don't think he's scored yet, but he's still smashing right now. He's playing on the road in Seattle. All the things I talked about with Dak Prescott apply here. Dallas is an underdog on the road, but still a 30-plus implied team total. 57 ridiculous over-under, all those things. Now, I pointed it out with Dak. The important things, or some of the important things here, is that Dallas has been passing the ball a lot. Even when they're at home, they're at a 60-40 split on the season. I think they're going to continue that. If not, go to 65-70 here in Seattle, a team that does not stop the ball in the air or through the air. So again, a good spot for Dallas in their passing game in general this week in week 3 versus Seattle. Things I want to point out for him specifically, though: 23 total targets for the first 2 weeks. That's more than 10 targets per game. That's absolutely an elite, excellent number there. 28% of the team's total target share. That's 11th overall in the NFL. Basically, he's a hog, right? You want that. 30% is elite, man. But 28% definitely something we want to target there. We know the ball goes to him a lot. 38%, nearly 40% of the total team air yards. So a lot of people like air yards more so than other stats. It basically not only shows that this guy is getting targeted, but he's getting targeted down the field where it matters. He's going to get, yardage when he catches the ball. 40% of the team, I mean, that's a lot of air yardage. That's top 10 in the NFL. Again, another good indicator for Amari Cooper here. Seattle secondary, I talked about them with Dak, graded 22nd overall in Pro Football Focus. I talked about those 4 receivers that got over 100 yards so far versus them. That's Jones, Ridley, Gage, and Edelman. Spelled Edelman wrong there. I apologize for that. I'll try to correct it if I don't. Again, sorry to you guys that are big Patriots and Edelman fans, but things happen, right? Outside of that, other receivers like Harry, I can't think. There was other receivers that were like 75, 80-yard receivers versus them in those 2 games too. So just an excellent smash spot for Dak, for Amari Cooper. Julian Edelman is by far one of my favorite receivers on this slate also. $6,500 on FanDuel, $62 on DraftKings. This is what I'm talking about. I think everybody is affordable that I like this week. But he's playing, obviously pairs perfectly with with Cam Newton that I mentioned in the quarterback section. Versus Las Vegas here, all the same things apply. New England is a favorite at home, 26.8, nice team total, 47 over under. He's the second overall rated wide receiver this season. He's having a great season. People aren't really talking about it. He's pairing perfectly with Cam Newton. They're gelling. They're not missing a beat. It's all great between him and Cam Newton here. I think he's really motivated since the loss of Tom Brady and kind of, hey, Patriots are going to suck now. But in general, second overall rated receiver this season from Pro Football Focus. Good thing there. They're seeing good things from him. Top 3 NFL this season in terms of red zone targets. I think he has 4 or 5 on the season. Really good numbers there. When Cam isn't running the ball in the end zone, he's looking at this guy to throw the ball to. So good things there. 29% of the team's target share. That is 10th overall in baseball. I just talked about Amari Cooper. Right above him, top 10 there, is Edelman in that same regard. But the two big things here, number 1, NFL yards and route run. Number 1 in the NFL in terms of a 58% of the team's air yards. That's a ridiculous number. Double-digit targets in week 2. You saw 11 come from Cam Newton towards him. Top 10 in terms of a wide receiver quarterback matchup. That's plus 30% provided by Pro Football Focus. And then the secondary grade, I mentioned it with Cam, dead last for Las Vegas. So we've checked literally what don't you want? What don't you have here for Edelman? I think he has it all. If you're not playing Cam, I still like Edelman as a standalone. Great smash spot for him, especially DraftKings where you're getting ridiculous, points for just catches. I love Edelman. I love the spot for the Patriots passing game this week. Two other guys I want to quickly mention. Deontay Johnson for the Steelers, $6,300 on FanDuel, $54 on DraftKings. I like the spot for the Steelers passing game. I like the spot for the Steelers this week versus Houston. 45.5 over under, a good number there. Pittsburgh is a slight favorite, -4 at home. 24.5 implied team total. So good numbers there. Game should remain close, meaning they should continue to pass through the fourth quarter. Blow up performance for this kid is coming. I watch a lot of Steelers football. This kid is the real deal. He screwed up a lot in game 1. Ben Roethlisberger still continued to trust him, still continued to force feed this kid the ball. I mean, one hit him in the back of the head when he ran the wrong route. He didn't run a route. He just tried to block. So the fact that they still trust him in those situations or after those situations is a good sign here. What I will say personally from him, he's a quick receiver. They like to get him the ball in space underneath. He does work with his feet. He's a punt returner. I'm not saying he's Antonio Brown, but this kid is very quick, very fast, and has a good opportunity this week to really put up a good performance. Top 10 so far, though, in terms of a wide receiver cornerback matchup, plus 32%. Really good numbers there, meaning the guys he's matching up against for Houston just aren't going to be able to stop, especially a quick receiver like him. He's led the NFL, or he did lead the NFL in week 2 with 13 total targets. I talked about that. He's had 10 plus targets every week, week 1 and week 2 so far this season. Ben looks his way and looks his way often. That's better than Juju Smith-Schuster. That's better than any other receiver for the Steelers. Ben really has a connection and really wants to get this kid the ball. Top 5 in terms of a 32% team target share. Really good number there. That's better than the two guys I mentioned previously. They feed him the ball in space. And Houston, why this matters, I talked about it earlier. Houston is graded 24th overall in tackling from Pro Football Focus. That means when this kid gets the ball, he should be able to do damage, yards after catch. I really like that. And their secondary grade overall is not good. It's 23 in football. So really good spot for Deontay Johnson in the Steelers passing game. I like this kid. I think he'll go lower owned than a lot of other receivers. Last but not least here, fourth guy at the receiver position I'm heavily interested in. Really interested in. Smash spot for him. I don't think the risk is as bad as the Deshaun Jackson risk, boom or bust risk as past seasons, at least currently. I really like Deshaun Jackson this week for Philadelphia. 5,500 on FanDuel, 52 on DraftKings, gives you a super value price for a wide receiver there. Versus Cincinnati at home, 47.5 over under. Philadelphia is a slight favorite, almost a touchdown favorite at 4.5. 25.5 implied team total, good number there. I'm going to mention a lot of stats here, and this is all going to come together at the end. Top 10 in the NFL in terms of air yards, plus a 36% team usage in terms of air total yards. Top 10 NFL in 20-plus yard targets downfield. Top 10 in average depth of target. All those numbers still mean Deshaun Jackson is running deep routes, and he's still getting targeted on deep routes often. Good news here. Why? I'm going to skip ahead a little bit. Cincinnati's pass rush, their pass rush defense is graded 31st in the NFL, nearly dead last, meaning they're getting no pressure on quarterbacks or shouldn't. And in this case, Philadelphia, a team that has struggled in terms of giving up sacks and stuff so far, should finally have additional time, meaning more time to throw deep routes. And deep routes are what Wentz has been doing here. He's been throwing this guy the ball a lot without time. What's he going to do when he has time? I really like the spot for Deshaun Jackson. I think at this price, you don't need a lot to happen to pay off, but you also have an elite upside, potential blow-up opportunity here for a wide receiver that's cheap. In addition to that, a couple other things. Philadelphia is obviously decimated at wide receiver, so you should see a usage bump here. There was concern. We played him week 1. He only got 54% of the snaps. I think he walked himself off the field. But week 2, you saw 77%. I think he's getting healthier, so you should see 80 to 90% if he even comes off the field this week. Again, good things here. All good things. Cincinnati's been destroyed since 2019 by the deep ball. Go back to week 2, you saw OBJ, Odell Beckham, destroy them on one deep ball and then had an opportunity in a second if a holding call wasn't not called against him. I mean, it was a clear holding as he was basically burning that secondary. So all good things here. I think Deshaun Jackson is in a smash spot for his price especially. Moving on to the tight end position here, I do want to quickly mention two guys. Haven't paid up for tight end the first couple of weeks. It really worked out week 2. I got some exposure to some really cheap guys. That went off really helped my lineups there. So I'm going to continue to do that here. I don't see any elite tight ends that are in spots that I don't or I want to get exposure to. There's just nothing that's really pulling me in. As a result, I'm going to pay down here. Chris Herndon and Logan Thomas. Chris Herndon's $5,000 on FanDuel, 46 on DraftKings. Good pricing there. He's playing on the road in Indianapolis, 44 over/under. New York Jets are huge underdogs here, 11.5 on the road, only 16.5 implied team total here. So a really bad spot in terms of an offense. I don't want to get exposure. I talked about exposure to teams under 20 implied team total, and they're really low. But there are opportunities at certain value prices of guys I think you can go to. Herndon is the only guy I'm interested in here for the Jets. Everyone's injured. Literally everyone on the Jets is dead. They're not alive, and they're not playing football, and they're not catching passes. That includes wide receivers, running backs. Anyone and everyone seems to be either on the IR or missing this particular week. So as a result, I don't know where else they can go, where else Darnold can go with the ball other than Herndon here. You should see a usage bump. I'm not interested in playing any of these backup receivers. I'm just interested in the guy that's consistent in that offense. He's played nearly 70% of the snaps, or I should say 70% of the time when he is on the field, he's running a route. So he's not blocking. That's a good stat for tight ends if you want to know who's actually running routes. Chris Herndon is that guy. Coaching staff early on praised his abilities prior to the season. Let's see if that pays off eventually. I think this is the spot where it can. New York Jets, heavy road underdog. Again, top 10 passing team so far. 61%, 49% split in terms of pass run. They should continue to have to throw the ball here. He has had 11 targets so far in 2 weeks. Not a good number there. One was in the red zone. Let's hope he gets double-digit targets week 3. I think at $5,000, we can take the risk here for that cheaper price tag, for that value price tag. He has a slight advantage if you consider that from Pro Football Focus in terms of tight end advantages. But in general, I do like him. I like the cheaper price tag on him. And I'm also going right back to the well here with Logan Thomas. This kid continues to get targets. I think he has 9 and 8 in his first 2 games at a price under $5,000. He's cheaper than Herndon and arguably in a better spot here. 49 on FanDuel, $3,700 on DraftKings. I love that price tag. I will say I do think he's going to be highly owned. I've looked at some stuff. A lot of people are not talking about him, but it just seems like he fits in for a lot of people's lineups and helps with a lot of salary relief. He's playing on the road in Cleveland, 45 over/under. Washington is an underdog, 7.5, so they should be passing the ball a lot here. Again, another team I don't particularly have interest in from an offensive perspective with such a low implied team total, but one spot I will go to is Logan Thomas. There is a Cleveland tight end narrative. It's between me and my friends because no one else freaking talks about it. Cleveland gives up touchdowns to tight ends over and over and over and over again. I think so far this season, TJ, who scored? I can't remember who scored for Cincinnati. Week before, Andrews killed them. They go back to 2019, go back to 2018. Cleveland gives up tight end touchdowns. It's just what they do. They're very weak. There's an explanation. They're very weak at linebacker. They lost a linebacker to injury prior to the season. They traded away Schobert, one of their mainstays at linebacker. They just cannot cover tight ends. from their secondary and linebackers perspective. It's not a good spot when they have at least athletic tight ends against them. Logan Thomas has been having a good season from target perspective. Again, 17 total targets. Red zone targets have come in each game. All good things here. The downside is Dwayne Haskins just can't connect with him. It's the same situation as Allen Robinson is in with Mitch Trubisky. The quarterback play sucks, but feed him the ball, keep feeding him the ball. $5,000, 37 on DraftKings. Come on, man. We're going to eat that up all day here at No Huddle Fantasy Sports. Washington, again, a heavy road underdog, meaning the ball's going to be in the air a lot. 94% of the snaps that he is playing, he's running a route on. That is a ridiculously high number. I think that's number 1 overall in the NFL, meaning this guy literally doesn't even block when he's on the field. He just is running routes. Good news from a DFS fantasy perspective. Payoff at the salary is coming. This spot is as good as any, as I mentioned, versus Cleveland. Imagine if he catches 7 or 8 balls. I mean, it's going to be a smash spot for him at that price tag. So that's really it in terms of tight ends. Let's move on here very quickly to some other highlights. This is an extremely long video. If you're still with me, trust me, it's worth it. It's going to pay off. I apologize. If you guys want to see shorter videos with less explanation, let me know in the comments. I do enjoy this. I want to give you guys information that's going to help you be successful. I don't want to just say, hey, play this guy, good luck. I want you guys to know why you're playing them, and you can make decisions. Maybe you decide based upon what I tell you that you don't want to go there. But I don't want to waste any more time here. Couple of things I want to talk about in these other highlights. I mentioned there's a lot of quarterbacks I'm interested in. Of the other two, or I should say the first two I mentioned of Cam and Dak, two other guys I'm extremely interested in, Ben Roethlisberger and Ryan Tannehill. Ryan Tannehill just keeps coming up on my list here. Great spot for him from a number of different spots, a number of different ways to look at it. Derrick Henry is on the road, so I don't like that there for him. I think Tennessee's going to throw the ball a little bit here. The downside is he's missing A.J. Brown. Ben Roethlisberger pairs with Deontay Johnson. Great spot for him. Great spot for that passing offense versus Houston in general. Kyler Murray, of course. If I go any other quarterback that I mentioned of those three, I'm not playing Russell Wilson. I'm playing Kyler Murray. I love Nick Chubb this week for Cleveland. Smash spot for him every week. If he gets the ball and Hunt doesn't, Nick Chubb is one of the best backs in the NFL. Chris Carson, a great way to pivot off of all that Seattle ownership is to go with Chris Carson, although all the receivers are in good spots. I'll mention them. James Conner, in addition, I love the Steelers offense this week. I think he's in a good spot versus Houston this week. Henderson, running back for the Los Angeles Rams. I don't know. You guys need to look at this. The only reason I'm talking about it is because if he was by himself, it's an all-day yes, but it looks like Malcolm Brown is going to be playing with a broken finger, so I don't know how that's going to play out. But Metcalf, Lockett, Seattle receivers obviously in play. Lamb in play. N'Keal Harry for New England, another guy that's getting 30% passing from Cam and them. Another guy that's in play here. I'll skip down a little bit. Corey Davis is a good spot. DJ Moore, Juju Smith-Schuster, all the Steelers in play. Terry McLaurin versus a bad Cleveland secondary there. Although, again, I don't like to target those low total teams. And Adam Thielen and Allen Robinson both in good spots. Allen Robinson, same deal. Logan Thomas, it's the quarterback play that's really hurting him. But nonetheless, I do like Allen Robinson. At some point, he's going to go off. With that said, we close out Week 3 NFL DFS Playbook here at No Huddle Fantasy Sports. I thank you guys, as always, for tuning in here. A lot of this information is built from Daily Fantasy Nerd, the optimizer that I tout, that I use, that I think is underappreciated and not really known, meaning a lot of the stats that you pull from it are going to result in you being unique in terms of lineups. It's not as heavily invested into by players as others, but it nonetheless is an elite optimizer. Daily Fantasy Nerd, check it down in the description. I linked an affiliate link. It's a free month for you guys, but it does help the channel here just to know that I got an affiliate sign up. So if you guys want to consider an optimizer, build multiple lineups, track your bankroll. In general, if you want to put a ton of lineups together, you got to use an optimizer. So check that out. I highly recommend it. But outside of that, thank you guys again so much for hanging in there. This video has been long. Leave me some comments down below. Make sure you like, subscribe, all the good stuff. Hit all the buttons, all the things down there. And I promise you, somehow, some way, you're going to be helping this channel out. I wish you the best of luck in Week 3. Let's continue to rock it. With that said, good luck. I will catch you in the next video.